Can't. I'm looking at this fucking thing in the. I
We
can't
gotta
tell
get
where
the
my
hat
hair goes.
going as we go live. Scott is
Scott's having a
got
hairstyle issue.
Are you the crazy French painter, Scott, or?
Well, I was going to get a haircut today, and then when I was pulling out of the driveway, I got texted, and the guy's like, "Hey man, can you come tomorrow?" And I'm like, I was like, "I don't know, man." And they said, "Yeah, I just don't feel good today." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come tomorrow."
Yeah,
right?
I don't want whatever you
I'll
got.
definitely be there tomorrow.
I'll be there next week, please.
Yeah. About 2 weeks, I'll show up. So if I don't wear my hat now, it looks like this.
Yeah, well,
You look fine. You have hair.
Yeah, but still.
Well, and while you're,
control.
while you're voguing for us, who are you?
Well, I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I train law enforcement in the military in interrogation and body language. Greg?
I'm Greg Hartley. I'm a former Army interrogator, interrogation instructor, resistance to interrogation instructor, written a bunch of books on body language and behavior, and I do most of my time on Wall Street and corporate America today.
Perfect. And while I've got you guys here, this is going to be a little bit of a departure from the behavior panel. We're going to act as if we're adults, but only act. We don't want to go too far with it. And things may slip into bedlam anyway. What we're going to talk about, though, is you guys are always talking about your course. And as a matter of fact, you just did an intro and you didn't talk about the course. So I guess the whole thing is you have this course, behavioral, body language tactics.
Yep.
And you pitch it all the time. I want to know what it's about, because essentially a good chunk of everything you do is in that course, from what I understand.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the easiest way to approach it is we take a very simple micro course approach so that you can learn in your daily life, pick up a few things, and then go out and try it. Go out and try it with other people. It just gives you a chance to learn. And if you do enable body language, Alexa, enable bodylangaugetactics.com, you'll get a couple of free lessons a week it's flash brief. I think Scott's the right word.
Yeah. It's because you have to go, Alexa, enable body language tactics. And then you'll hear this.
Body language tactics is in your flash briefing.
Already done it.
Just say, "What's my flash briefing?"
Okay.
To manage it,
I should have turned that off. Sorry, man.
Tap on settings.
Well, and guys, I'm a 20-year Army interrogator. I don't have that stuff in my house. It's just not.
Yeah. That's right. You can't do that.
I just don't. It's not a matter of whether I can. I'm not.
It's an issue.
Don't like it.
Okay, I do not want to have it in my house either. I mean, I've thought about it. I have 2 Apple devices with Siri. Mm-hmm. That's it. At least I know that's local. But I will say that's obnoxious too. If you ask the weather, it'll give you the weather, and then it goes into weather information is provided by the Weather Channel.
That's because y'all are doing it wrong. I'm loaded with those things. I've got like all the Echoes. I've got 1, 2, all those. I got a big one down here in my office, and I have those little like the Echo 5, and I have an 8 in the kitchen. I love them.
I don't know anything about it.
No, we get up in the morning and say, I can't say it now because it'll do it. But I say,
no.
What's your name? Good morning, and it turns everything on, starts the coffee. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, I always say I'm the Luddite in the group. I want the sharp stick and Sandy Beach approach to everything. I want simple. That's who I am.
Big sister. Love it. All right. Well, you know what? Before we get started, because I think it's good to have a bit of your history and what your influences are. Somebody asked here, Jana Ganaway, what would be your top 3 books on body language for the novice and why? And I'm sure that's top of mind for both of you.
Okay, well, I'll go first. Mine. Well, I've got 3 that I always send people to, because we get tons of email.
Sure.
People, the behavior panel at gmail.com. You can get hold of us there. And so my top 3 are Greg's got one called "I Can Read You Like a Book." I love that book. It's great. It's got all the little things, but it's got big stuff in it as well. You can, and depending on how many times you read it, that depends on how advanced you can go with it. Joe Navarro has one called "What Everybody Is Saying," and that's a fantastic book. I absolutely love that. Mark Bowden has one called "Truth and Lies," and I want to say 4 because Chase has one called "The Ellipsis Manual," which is probably going to be a classic. And Mark's written a bunch of books as well, and Greg's written 117 or 18 books, all #1 body language books. So those are my top ones.
Yeah. So, and Scott's got a new book coming out, and as soon as that hits, I think you should read that. Read his pre-reads. I also would say, since you've listed all those guys have great books. But if you want foundational, basics, I would say go pick up I would say Ekman, but if you really don't want to read scientific studies, that's tough reading. So I'd go pick up Desmond Morse's The Naked Ape. It'll make you think about people differently. And the other one I love by Desmond Morse is Man Watching. And we all have copies of that, first editions, most of us, because it's what got us started.
Oh, yeah.
Easy first books. It changes how you think of people, and you start looking at us differently. And I only recently learned, and I picked up a copy of it, about Darwin's book called The Expressions and Emotions of Man and Animal. He was writing about this stuff in 1872. So interesting times. And I like going back and looking at the older books.
Yeah, is it helpful, like, to get a different perspective? And I'd be curious too, because I have the thesis that 100 years ago we did a lot better just naturally than we do now. So,
well, the interesting piece in the Darwin book is he was approaching it from the same angle I do. We're monkeys, we're just fancy monkeys. You know, we have behaviors that are just like our primate cousins, many of them, and then we have some others. But you couldn't say that in 1872. So his approach was a little different. But I think I always say all these adages like, you know, thin lip lie, lily white liar, those kinds of things. We knew those, or they would not be common parts of our speech. We've just gotten more polite in history as history's progressed.
okay, interesting. And while we're sliding to the course, here's a testimonial from our friend Gavin Stone. And
Yeah.
Gavin Stone is a member. You see, he's got the cool marker there next to his name. That means that Gavin Stone is supporting the channel.
Excellent.
Having done the course, I can testify firsthand how great it is, an extremely valuable course for anybody. Can you tell us so? Does the whistled "This Old Man" tune have a significant meaning? Yeah.
Maybe.
That's Scott's performance of.
Yeah, that's from Columbo, because we're all big Columbo heads. So every time he's figured out who's done it, and he hasn't said who's done it or anything yet, you know it because he starts whistling that little whistle. So I put it on there as a joke once, and somebody that was in the comments said, "Hey, you should do that all the time." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I kept putting it in. If you listen real close, there are a couple of little things I sneak in that the other guys don't know about yet. A couple of backwards things.
I caught a couple of them, but yeah.
Okay. So little Easter eggs or whatever that I stick in there about Columbo.
Well, the sound master. So if you're going to have a guy who did this for a living, why not have him take advantage of his skill set?
Yeah, no kidding. You produced Bootsy Collins and what was that?
I did a record with Bootsy, and I've done everything from comedy to bluegrass. Jeff Foxworthy to Doc Watson, and so it runs the gamut as far as styles go.
Groove-grass, that's it.
Yeah, it was kind of
many things Scott's done. Yeah.
So my approach to all that was I wanted to get whatever somebody was doing. I wanted to get it full on, the best they could do, whatever, which is what you want to do as a producer. Which is what I was, and so that's what you want to do. So I like to do a little bit of everything.
Okay, were you also an engineer too? Because I know you went to Berkeley, right?
Yeah, went to Berkeley. I got nominated as an engineer twice, I think, for Grammys, and a lot for producer. For a lot for production and most everything I produced got nominated, but I never won one. But I'm not bitter. I don't have a problem with that, Eric. Not at all.
Well, that's good to hear. So, a quick question on that note, because I talked to negotiators too. Mm-hmm. If you're an engineer by trade and sound producer, do you also not only read body language but work in negotiation and listening to timbre of voice and things like that?
Scott's mastered that, I will tell you, because he'll pick up things that we don't hear in recordings. And I think anybody who does body language and doesn't also pay attention to pitch, tone, and cadence is missing the boat. Right?
Yeah, it's real important because the skill of understanding the way people act and what people like to think it's almost. I have a buddy of mine, Terry Hearn. He always says, "So, how's your mind reading business going?" And I always talk about that because it just floored me the first time we did it. Everybody's under the impression you can read. You can't read minds. It gives you a pretty good idea of what that person's thinking and what they might do next. We're all animals. We're all different. So when you're in your business situation, especially in the music business, where it's a bunch of cagey people up in that thing, then you really have to pay attention to what's going on and who you're talking to. So you'll know what might happen or what they might say next. And you'll know everybody says, "Oh, it's great. I love it. We're going to do this, this, and this." And most of the time, if you know what you're looking for, you can tell they're just saying that to you. So you can make, and that's why I got so many meetings, because I would go in and everybody would book an hour. Can I get an hour with so-and-so, an hour with Tony Brown? And I'd call up, say, hey, can I meet with whoever it was for, have a meeting with it? Oh yeah. Because they knew I'd come in and I'd be in and out in 20 minutes, because there wasn't too much you could do to tell me something that wasn't true, or you were going to do that you weren't going to, and they could just be full out and go, here's the way it looks. Here's what's going to, no. Or yeah, we'll do this, this, and this. That's all we got. That's it. So they go really quickly. So it's usually an hour. I was in and out in 20 minutes and could usually get done what needed to be done. So it was great, a tool for that, a wonderful tool for that business.
I think you've talked about this probably many times, but I really love that. Were you the one who would go in when they're pitching a deal and you would listen to them and be like, yeah, that's it. But you would have to be careful because they would deliberately sign bands just to spike the records because they had a competing act?
What would happen is you'd have an act and there would be a label that would have another act that was doing great, but you were sort of doing one like that. You'd see, the key was seeing what was hitting and then doing things just like it. That's what most people do. That's why a lot of people, you have Justin Bieber and everybody sounds like Justin Bieber. You have some Christina Aguilera and people start to sound like Christina Aguilera. So that's what you're dealing with. So a lot of times what would happen back in the 80s is people would be, and the 90s as well, I guess in the 2000s, I retired from that in 2011 or something. So what they would do is they would act like they were into your act, and they would sign your act and make you feel like it was it was going to happen or anything, when they had no reason, no intention whatsoever of putting it out, because they didn't want to compete with what they already had. And when the other one started going down, that's when they put that album out, or that single or whatever it was, to sort of test the waters to see how that one would do. But up to that point, they would hold on to it. Didn't happen with all of them, but it did happen quite often.
But you'd smell it when you enter in the.
Exactly. Yeah, you could tell exactly who was going to do what. So, and I would get, and a lot of people would have me go to meetings with them, so I could see and go, here, no, you don't want to do this. This isn't the one you want. Yeah, but they said all this stuff, and like you asked me to come here and tell you what I thought. That's what I think. So do what you want, but that's what it looks like to me. They're gonna keep your stuff, or they're gonna do this, or this, or they're not gonna do this, and this. So that made a lot of friends being able to do that. So
it's a valuable negotiation to be able to read the person you're talking to. I mean, salary negotiations, if you're watching and you can learn to tell when someone is hedging on salary, for example, when a person, you ask how much money they have or how much money you want, and they drop away from a memorized thing into an internal voice, they're hedging, they're calculating, they're taking a percentage off of what they have. And if you know that and you can read eye movement and tell where they're going in their head, then you can call them on it very quickly or do something else to redirect. I think it's powerful in any kind of negotiation.
Are you good at ascertaining what their actual number might be? Or, are you kind of a little warmer, a little colder, and just kind of watching the read as people are talking?
Well, typically, this is an elicitation technique, is bracketing, fire high, fire low, ridiculous sizes, and then you narrow. All negotiators do that. But you use it in elicitation. Remember, when we talk about interrogation is typically a camped kind of I own you, I have absolute control over you. Elicitation is I'm talking to you in a bar and I'm trying to get information. More of a counterintelligence kind of a skill. And when you learn both of those and they play together, it's very powerful. I would say, Scott, when you're going in to get a confession from somebody who's taken money or intellectual property, you're using elicitation as much as you're using interrogation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are about 9 elicitation techniques that are pretty common. John Nolan, there's a great book for you, Confidential. John Nolan wrote a book called Confidential. I worked for John for a while with Phoenix Consulting, and he would teach businesses how to get information above board from their competitors. It's illegal if you do it by subterfuge, but if you're above board, you can get information.
Oh, wow. Now, I'm going to throw this one to Greg too, but somebody wrote in, would love to hear, this is Alicia would love to hear how you first two met. And I'm curious how you feel your skills compare, contrast, and cross-pollinate.
Well, I'm going to let Scott in.
Okay. So anyway, I was doing I'd read all of Greg's books, and he's one of those guys that on your Mount Rushmore, he's on my Mount Rushmore of body language people. Joe Navarro's the first 2 heads on there. The next one is Greg on the 4 or 5 pages. So I was the people at TEDx said, "Hey, look, we've had somebody drop out. And we're going to do a TEDx thing in 2 days. Can you do it?" I said, "Yeah, I can do it. Sure, I'll do it." So I was going to do a TEDx talk. Now I was trying to think, what am I going to call it? So I had this whole talk worked out and I called it Body Language Frankenstein. And then I realized after I'd done that, I'd totally ripped that from Greg's book where he said,
Oh,
in a way, he'd said, if you don't pay attention to what's happening, you do this, this, and this, and you create a Frankenstein's monster of body language because you're taking different pieces and you say, oh, it means this every time, it means this every time. To me, it was brilliant. So I called it Body Language Frankenstein. So it's like 3 days before I do this, or 2 days before I do this. And on the day before it, I emailed him and I said, hey, you don't know me, but I'm getting ready to do this TEDx talk. And I totally lifted this thing from your book. And I call it Body Language Frankenstein, and you call it this. I explained what it was. And then what I got back was later that afternoon, I got like an email back, and there was nothing in the body of it, just in the subject matter. It said, "I'll call at 12." I was like, "Oh no!" So it scared me to death because you've seen those pictures of them on the back of these books. It's like, oh, God. So yeah, look at them now. So I went out to my car. And I was at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center where I was entrepreneur in residence because I would go there and help people create their pitches and so they could pitch for to get funding for their businesses, right, or for their startups. I still do it. And the phone rang and I picked it up and it said, Scott. And I said, yeah. He said, hey, it's Greg. I said, hey man, I got to tell you, I've been doing this. Oh, hey, it sounds great. And he's just like what you see now. He's like, oh yeah, great. I'll help you with it, whatever you need to do. I was like, okay, great. So we talked for like an hour, and we talked like several times the next few days after that. You don't have a lot of people you can talk to if you're in this
when
business.
was this? What year?
13 or
been a while. It's been 7 or 8 years. I had almost quit body. I mean, I was deep in business, doing a lot of consulting in business, but not doing much other than an occasional speaking gig with body language. I think I wrote a business book in 12, so it was right after that. Yep.
Okay.
Most dangerous business book you'll ever read. God, the thing's packed.
Fun book. Yeah.
It's great.
All I did with that book was I worked with hostage negotiators. I worked with counterintelligence guys, with polygraphers, and all I did was take a chapter and dedicate it to what I learned from each of those people in my years and then used in business. And so it was a fun book.
Yeah.
I love the Columbo Cup, by the way, as somebody mentioned in here. And I hope that Chase's feelings aren't hurt when he watches this on a replay.
Oh, because because they don't have his cup.
The Chase Cup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
so, that's an Easter egg for the behavior panel folks.
There you
Most
go.
probably already know it. All right, so let's swing into a little bit of what you guys are teaching, just so people can get a vibe. I think half the people here have already taken your course, so go ahead and buy a second copy for a friend. No,
Hey, well, it's on sale.
there you go. It is on sale, so awesome. All right,
Cool.
Basically, you have it broke down. Now you have videos where you guys are talking about that, but that'll be sort of lame. When I have you here, I can have you talk about this, and it's broken down with slides and things that intersperse between. So we start out right here with everybody's favorite. What are we talking about here, Greg?
Yeah.
This PDF that we use. This is the PDF you get. One of the PDFs once you for each lesson you get a PDF and you get an MP3. And what happens is if I'm talking on the video, then Greg says it's pretty much the same idea of what I'm saying, but not like I'm saying how he would say it. And you get that on MP3 you can listen to later. But this is from the PDFs that you download, so you can click through them and see what we talked about to remind you. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. So
No, I think that's an important part, Scott. But this lesson in particular, I always open every session I do when I'm doing a talk and say, what do you know about body language? And everyone learned in high school psychology, this means you're shutting someone out. And I always say, yeah, that's one thing, and that's called a barrier, and it may or may not mean anything. If all you learn is that one piece, it's like learning verbs in Spanish. Your Spanish is going to be pretty limited. And if you look, all the rest of those things like facial expressions and adapters and illustrators and all those other things that are going on in each of these people means that every person is sending a different message. And that's this lesson in the nutshell. But we'll go into details and show you what to look for and what it means different in each of these. And each of these micro courses then is something you can walk away and study. To Scott's point, you take the PDF and you take the recording so you can walk out and in the wild look at people and figure out what they're doing. That's our intent.
Which is called, by the way, I love that you start with the arms crossed, because it's sort of a pet peeve of mine. If I'm standing, I'm bored. So, I mean, I'm probably just going to be, what am I supposed to do with my arms? I guess I can go parade rest, but that's a little too army.
I have extremely long arms, and if I'm standing often, I'll just fold my arms and
Exactly. So
relax.
it's quite often relaxed, or just I don't have, I'm not going to put in pockets. You just kind of casually standing there.
So many things that come with everything you just said. So if you put your arms behind your back, that's known as royalty arms. And when you're doing that, it makes you look like you're better than everyone else. Makes you look a little bit snotty. And you see royalty do it. It's okay if they do it. You see a general do it in front of the troops. That's okay if he does that. But if you're out in the wild and you're doing that as you're walking around talking to people at a party or something, it's the worst thing you can possibly do. And then having your hands in your pockets, that makes you look like the lowest person on the totem pole as far as who's the alpha in the group, or for everyone's going, you're in charge, you're the last one. It makes you a safe person, as Greg will tell you, because you want to tell why? Because with snipers,
you're not going to do a whole lot. First of all, there's no quite comfortable way to go from hands in pockets to doing anything to me. I mean, is the way I look at it always. But yeah, you can hit the sniper story.
Okay. Well, if let's say you're a sniper up on a hill, to make a long story short, and you know the enemy is down in a house down there, right? Let's say you're in Afghanistan, and you see the people walking around out there. You see and you're trying to, and they don't have uniforms. They're wearing normal clothes, whatever the clothes are for over there. And so when you're looking down at these people that are standing around down there, you're thinking, who's in charge? Who's the guy I want to tag? Because you got about 2 shots and you got a bolt. There's probably you and one other team. So as you decide who you're going to tag, you look for the guy with the hands in his pocket, because that's not the guy you want. That's the last guy you want, because he's just standing around. That's the lowest guy on the totem pole. So what you want is that guy we talked about earlier with his hands behind his back. You want one of those. Sometimes you'll see a couple of them, but if you see him walk in a group, the guy's walking just a couple of steps or maybe half a step in front of the others that are doing as well. That's the guy you want to tag, because he's the leader.
Well, and there's a ton of things associated with hands. You're crossing your hands in front of your groin. I call that protecting the precious. The old title for it, though, is the fig leaf. And that one, women do a similar thing by crossing their arm across their abdomen, is protecting primary sex organs. And that's what we do when we're under stress. Now, a lot of people are taught to stand that way, and it just looks goofy to body language people. We're thinking, just put your hands by your side, you'll look better. And then to Scott's point, proxemics and how close someone gets to someone else can tell you how much power they have. When I worked SEER, for example, I could tell you what rank someone was by standing in a guard tower and seeing how much space they had around them. It's just part of it.
And people defer to them as well.
Oh, yeah, they do. I mean, they defer in body language, but they'll give them space. If you've ever been in the Army, the old saying is, don't get close to the sergeant major or you'll be painting something. So people always...
Well, okay, you were in the Army too. Do you remember this one? Because you'd have some officer in the field who was, I'll put it out there, asshole. Sniper check, sir.
Yeah.
They didn't like it when we said it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Crazy times. All right, so we're in agreement. The crossed arms are probably better than many other options.
Well, and the other thing to remember is this is the big driver. Scott and I drive this home more and more and more. If somebody tells you something is an absolute, you should question their ability. Because if I do this a million times, this is Darwin 101. The more times I do something, the more pronounced that nerve becomes, because of more energy going through that nerve, and the more likely I am to do it. Habits are habits are habits in some cases, and they may mean nothing. Right. So you have to look for a baseline and look for deviation.
And what we're looking for with all those people, we had 6 different people and they all had their arms crossed. However, the big differentiating factor, the reason there was a circle around their heads, was because the big differentiating factor were their expressions, their facial expressions. So that's what we talked about there as well. And we show examples of each person as we go through.
Yeah, here's a pair.
Even looking at how someone holds their hand, for example, if someone is a threat, they're not going to trap their hands. It's not human nature. Right? There are lots of things you can read into hands and arms. And again, if it's a normal move for that person, it's a normal move for that person. So you're looking for baseline and deviation.
And that's another thing I've learned too, right? Crossed legs typically means somebody's relaxed, not the reverse. Because if your legs are crossed, you can't get up and go run or leave the room.
Well, and my favorite is people who cross their foot over their leg and have their foot relaxed. In an interrogation or an interview situation, that foot is going to release nervous energy. If you get them on the run, and Scott, I'm sure you've seen this many times, and you have somebody in the corner, their foot will point to the door if they want out. It's fun to watch. It's powerful.
Okay, so let me see. We got the hands here. All right, so do we want to go over what we're seeing here specifically?
Well, and with all these people, the thing that differentiates these two guys who are smiling, the only two that are smiling the whole thing, is we can't see their hands. That's the difference that we're seeing in that group of people. And so what might that mean? It can have a bunch of different meanings. However, we'll still break it down. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
And we can't see their hands on both of them. They're both smiling. But then let's take a look at the difference in smiles. The guy on the right, we see that's a real smile. That's a Duchenne smile. We're not going to get into the intricacies of real smiles and fake smiles, but trust me, that's a real smile up there.
Yeah.
And the guy on the left, that's a fake smile. The guy on the right, look where his shoulders are. Look how low down his arms are. But look at the guy on the left, his are up a little higher.
Breathing's changed, everything you can tell.
Yeah. And the guy on the right, he's got that one ear forward like he's listening. The guy on the left, he's got both ears forward. He's paying attention to everything. He's taking in all the information he possibly can. He's watching and listening to everything. So let's look at what they're wearing. The guy on the right's wearing a golf shirt. The guy on the left's wearing a T-shirt with a shirt over it.
Mm-hmm.
So what could mean anything. It might mean nothing, probably means nothing. But if you go to the next slide, we'll break it down even further.
All right.
We talked about the real smiles, fake smiles. Let's go on to the next one then. We talked about this stuff as well. Sorry. So you can go on through that.
Yeah, I got you excited.
Yeah. So there's
it's one of our favorites. Right?
So this is when you're doing where's the weapon training, showing somewhere, showing explaining how you might find weapons. One of the things you look for is that shirt hanging over a T-shirt. The belt looks like it's pooching out just a little bit. He's not a big fat guy, but his belt's peeling this way a little bit, which means that isn't a gun belt, but he may have something stuck in the back of his belt there. And that's what takes us that little circle right there where we see that little thing sticking out. Might be a magazine, could be a phone, could be a paint stick. Who knows? What does it mean? Maybe nothing. Maybe he's carrying a weapon. Who knows? But it's something to pay attention to when you're out in the wild. So if anything goes wrong or starts getting weird, you can just leave. Or you can address the situation however you're supposed to address it if you're law enforcement or if you're a civilian, depending on what your situation is.
I know Chase does some of this, and I'm wondering if you guys do too. I don't remember exactly the breakdown, but it's something about how you stance against them. Like if you can just always be at a kind of a cross stance to where if you're on the side of where that guy would be pulling, there's no way he could pull without your seeing it.
Yeah.
That's going to hamper it.
Isolation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you're ever dealing with a police officer, it's 101 for them. The closer they are to the arm, the harder it is for you to move it and go away from that. Plus, there's a threat. The best part of human beings is there's a lot of hardwiring going on. If I stand at a square with you, face to face, you'll find a way to oblique to me. Men do it all the time. I can walk you down the hall like that by getting square with you because you'll turn to an oblique to get away from me. I've used it in business many times, standing talking to somebody and square off with them and watch them turn their body and then square off with them again and watch them turn their body the other way. So by moving to that arm, it's a threat and it's hardwired. This is not something the guy's sitting there thinking, hey, he's going to get me. But you can get to the point where you are isolating that arm so they can't use it. Police officers, the way they stand at a car window is intentional. All of that stuff's intentional. And
okay, on that same note, is it good sometimes if let's say your negotiation or whatever is getting heated to just stand side by side? I know, especially with males, we're more comfortable side by side than necessarily head on.
At obliques, most of the time, square on, men will start to feel aggression and that kind of thing. And you'll be able to see it in people's faces. You'll be able to see their face change, the flush, the white, and see their pupils dilate and all those pieces. But square on is not the easiest way to make someone comfortable. It depends on what your approach is in the negotiation. Do you want to make them feel uncomfortable or do you want to make them feel comfortable? That's all wiring issues. But if I square off with you, it'll make you feel uncomfortable. It's just human nature. You could try it tomorrow with anybody you know. Just walk up and stand square, men square on with another man and watch him move, find a way to move.
By that, Greg means just straight ahead like this.
Yeah.
Usually when you meet someone afterwards, you'll turn sideways and go, yeah.
Yep.
That's what they're talking about. Basically.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a question here from Forsaken Roth. What if you have your hands folded down, hanging in front of you? This kind of goes with the crossing arms.
In front of the groin, you mean?
I guess, yeah.
Thick leaf, and that usually indicates threat. It means that you're uncomfortable. Now, again, people are taught to do that. I worked in a company where they taught all of their new inductees to put their hands in front of their groin. I told him it looked silly, but that's what people teach.
What about belt loop or in the waist, which is kind of like a half hand pocket, but half not? Do you have any, or thumb in pocket? What are the variants you guys see on that?
As far as what do you mean?
Hands on the hip kind of stance, you mean?
Oh,
Yeah, well, a hand on the hip can, especially one-handed. Have you ever seen the movie Dave?
Kevin Kline movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Oh, no, it's In and Out. Or is it In and Out? I can't remember now. Anyway, he was a high school teacher who one of his students said that he was gay, and he was trying to prove it. So there was an audio recording. He did a one-hand thing, and he said, "What are you, a teapot?"
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So anytime a hand on the hip makes me think of a teapot thing. Let's see. I'm looking at some more questions here. Huh. Okay. This is from Chris B. How were you each selected to do interrogation in the military? Any tests to determine if you were a good fit for it? I think this is all Greg.
So
yeah, military.
I went on interrogation for 8 years, and I will tell you, there's not really a good test. There's an aptitude test for, you know, how you can analyze data and that kind of thing, but that really has no value. The way I got there is I was working in Arlington, and I was tired of working in Arlington. No honor to be there and all that, but it was time to do something else. And I went to take a language. And when you take a language, they decide, hey, you either have to be a voice intercept guy, you have to be an interrogator, you have to be a counterintelligence guy. And you choose which way you go, as long as you have the right test scores. And I would tell you it takes about 1,000 people to make 10 really good interrogators. Because out of that 1,000, 900 are going to be questioners. Just questioners. It's a method, it's a system. But then you're going to get another 90 that get the behavior piece or get the approaches, the psychology, and you get 10 guys who can stitch it all together. So there's not really a good test. And I've watched lots of guys burn up, burn out, who are not good at it, and even worked with some of them on TV shows I've done, and they would not get the nuance of the actual interrogation, the nuance of getting behind somebody's face and getting them to a place where they can't run. That's the complexity of interrogation. Everyone thinks it's bright lights and rubber hoses. That's theater. None of that stuff is powerful as the psychology of understanding what drives a person, getting them to trust you. And it's the same thing Scott does. It's exactly, all interrogation is based on trust. You can scream and yell and make someone feel intimidated. Okay, that has some value, but most of the time, once they trust you, they start bleeding information. It's the Columbo trick all over again, pulling information out of someone slowly.
Another important thing with that is all they have to do is say, I'm leaving. I want my lawyer. I don't want to talk to you anymore. So you've got to make an atmosphere where they want to stay there.
That's right.
They don't want to sit there and have you ask them about things they've done that they shouldn't have done. You've got to make it. You've got to make them feel at home, make them feel relaxed, and make them. They know they're in trouble. They know something's up, or they may not know they're in trouble yet. They know something's up as you ask them about these things. But you've got to get them comfortable. So when you get them boxed in, they won't want to get up and leave because they've already in this unwritten contract with you. The way you're getting along, that's going to make them stay because they're innocent. You know, and they'll keep trying to prove that, even though you've got them boxed in until they trip up and can't.
And I'll take it a step further. When you're a military intelligence interrogator and you own that person, literally, I mean, you sign for them and they are brought to you and then you have to sign them back over. You still don't want to just be a jerk to be a jerk, because you can do that one time. And, you know, I was talking to a really good 30-year Marine Corps interrogator. Everybody thinks that if I do something mean to you, like hurt you, you'll give me information. Well, maybe you'll give me a little bit of information one time, but that's it. Long-term relationship building is how you get information out of people, even if it's a
rapport, right?
Yeah, it's rapport.
You're building rapport.
Well, all interrogation, it really boils down to a handful of things. You establish control of the situation, make sure you got the right guy. Then you build rapport. Then you go into an approach, which is a psychological ploy we do. Then you extract information. Then you build rapport. Then you terminate. That's the process Scott uses, I use, police officers use every day. It's methodical, it's process driven, and it gets you across the line.
Would you? I've always thought that interrogation and negotiation are the same thing. It's just different circumstances. Is that a fair?
I think negotiation is creating a new reality and creating trust there. And interrogation is very different from that, because you suspend reality when you are doing that negotiation thing. You make people believe things that are absolutely insane. Yeah, I'll land an airplane for you right out here on this road. Sure. Yeah. You guys start trusting negotiators with some crazy ideas. But there's similar skill sets. I think they're just, the approach is different because you're a cloistered environment and you can create a new normal with a person when you're an interrogator that is different from when you're trying to do it as a negotiator.
And I think I'm quoting you, Greg, on this, where it's theater for one.
Yep.
So you have to keep in mind you're doing this show for this one person, whether you're negotiating, whether you're selling something, or trying to get a better deal with it, or trying to get them to tell you about something they shouldn't have done, or something they did that they shouldn't have done. It's just theater for one.
And you pay really close attention. I actually talked to a specialist in psychopathy one time who said, you guys emulate psychopaths because you pay so much attention to a person that you're seeing all their drives and filling in. It's almost like a receptor. You see what they need and you give it to them. And if they can pay attention, they can see it coming from you.
Okay, I'm going to back up a little because there's different kinds of interrogations, or would you just say interviews? And I'm asking this for a reason because, especially when you're talking about the police, you have somebody, they're a suspect, but you're not 100% sure. Do you act differently towards someone who you think has information for you? You don't necessarily know that they did it. You just think they may know something, versus the person you think definitely did it. And sorry for the long question.
Well, you just hit the key thing that makes 900 people questioners and 100 people interrogators. It's that you assume that you know what they have. If you are a good interrogator, you don't assume anything. You go in and I would say the same thing's true in police interview or any other interview. You should think, hey, here's the framework that I'm in, but you listen to that person. You talked about hearing. I hear source leads. I hear word pattern shifts. I hear cadence shifts. I hear tone shifts. I hear pitch shifts. That tells me where to go. And then I follow that lead. And there are different kinds of leads. There's hot leads. And when you're doing intelligence interrogation, that means something I need to know and I need to fix right now. Hey, there's bad guys with guns a mile away. That's a hot lead. A cold lead is something I put away and do the Columbo approach and come back to it slowly. So I don't think there is a fundamental difference. I think it matters what you're trying to collect and what your requirements are.
I agree.
All right, that makes sense. Got a question here dealing with the crossing. This is from A. Joe. And by the way, this guy has an amazing YouTube channel. Everybody should check it out. His editing, Scott, you love editing. It's top notch, total great sense of humor, and amazing choices of music. So,
all right, check it out.
Yeah.
What is it? Where do I go?
YouTube.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe. Okay.
Which is an awesome name. He's obviously Canadian. Cross leg versus the executive cross. Curious. And I'm not sure what the executive cross is.
I think what he's talking about is just where you cross at the knees versus a parallel cross. Maybe I'm wrong, Joe. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah, let us know. I don't know what kind of lag we typically have. I'm going to jump over here to from PDX. And yeah, see, not everybody is fooled by Scott here. Ooh, Scott's smooth Southern charm, lethal for the liar.
Yeah, well, not for lying, but I mean, it's one of those things where you can bullshit real good when you need to. You know what I mean? So a lot of times you need to.
I think aging has been friendly to me in terms of that, because when I was young, I looked like I might hurt you. And these days, age is your friend because people trust you more for some reason, which is absolutely insane if you think about it. Getting old and you could be the most evil person on earth and you're just better at it because you made it to that age.
Age and cunning beats youth and vigor every time. Is that essentially it?
Yeah.
All right. Here's from Maria Onafrietti. In a non-interrogation setting, do you have ideas for building rapport with smartphone addicts so they'll lift their head so we can see their facial expressions? And actually, that's a legit question. Is that giving problems in trying to read people and stuff because they're so absorbed in something else? You have to actually get their attention to get them to even lie to you or acknowledge you enough to read them.
It depends on the situation, but usually if someone is looking down at their phone and they're listening to you supposedly as you're having this conversation, you're asking them questions, just pause, wait for them to look up, and that's when you start talking again. Every time they look up, that's when you start talking. When they look at you, when they look back down at their phone, just be quiet. Don't say, just stop right then. and they'll look back up and you start talking again. And they catch on fairly quickly with that because they'll start laughing or smiling. And if you'll do that, you'll see a big difference in the way people react when they're on their phone.
Well, and I think it's a learned behavior, right? The more times you touch something, again, it's that nerve channel improving. When you're teaching interrogation and people say words like and and do that, you just mimic it over and over and over until they get sick of it. And if we could do the same with phones, have some sound coming out of yours when you're doing it, I think we could help society somehow.
Okay. And A. Joe said that you got it. They call the executive cross one knee over the other.
Yeah. So it's almost a feminine looking thing because they do their leg cross and they kind of sit back. That's one thing, because if you're the alpha, if you're the one in charge, if you're the person, if you're the executive of that company and people in there talking to you, you want to look, it's like the guy from Mad Men would do that. He'd sit back in his chair and cross his legs like that. And in a way, it looks a little effeminate, but at the same time, if you're so awesome, you can pull that off and you're not effeminate and they know you're not too. That's a whole other game right there.
It's separating too. Remember, separating body language is powerful. I mean, if you look at Trump doing this, right, all the time, people around you start to emulate that. It tells you who's alpha. I always say alphas don't strut, other people do. And alphas do their own thing. To your point, Scott, if I sit back and cross my legs a certain way, it's separating. And it's a learned behavior. I would tell you, no one I knew in the Army sat that way. Just not the behavior. Yeah.
Here's a good one. Where did we go? Have you ever interrogated someone who is deaf or very hard of hearing that use sign language?
So never sign language. I've interrogated someone who was very hard of hearing because of explosion, but other than that, no. So they didn't know sign language. One of my favorites ever is in training interrogators. We would use that as a training point. You would get some young interrogator who thinks, hey, this person can't hear. I'll get somebody who speaks sign language. Doesn't mean the person can communicate with sign language just because they can't hear. And so that's an assumption we have to be careful with too, with people. But no, never someone who spoke sign language. And a lot of times the people that I was talking to were in the Middle East, and that doesn't necessarily mean American Sign Language works there. So.
Okay, Kimmy Z continues on this. I interpret and find we all depend on facial expressions in addition to sign language. Sometimes signs aren't even needed. I find that deaf and most interpreters are good at reading faces for feedback.
Yeah,
I would say probably.
That's what they're doing, and they're reading body language literally as they spell out A, B, C, D, F, Z, as they're spelling words. I don't know sign language. I'd love to learn how, but that's what they're doing. They're reading. So a lot of those expressions come with with what they're saying and these specific signs they have for things. So that's when you can tell if it's something good or something bad. Now, when you watch these, when COVID first hit and you saw the mayor of whatever town, city come out and they had their body language person, sometimes those people are hilarious to watch because they're they're very big, but I'll bet they get the thing is they get that emotion across. But for us, it's weird looking because we're not used to seeing that.
Exactly.
On a little screen, they have to make it big. So they're all, not only are they using sign language, they're blowing everything up so it looks even bigger. So other people can read it better
too. What was it? We had what was it? Nelson Mandela, I think, it was spoofed by a fake sign language person or something. So
I think it might have been Obama, actually, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Obama, I believe, who had fake sign language. I was watching that. I remember the guys doing some things that didn't look exactly normal. I was thinking, maybe. But I don't read sign, and I know that people who do can see nuance and can communicate in ways, to your point, Scott, because they're reading. We all can read body language. We're all designed for it. We just turned it off. I always say, if you don't believe we can read it, that's good enough. Right? You can read that. All I got to do is roll my eyes. There's a great question by My Brit Moeller about female body language and misinterpreted. You see that one?
Okay, here. I think this is it. Any female body language that gets misinterpreted by men in a written environment. Should we mimic men to be taken seriously?
Written. I don't know exactly what you mean by body language. Written.
Work environment. Sorry.
So I'll give you a great, let me give you one that is often mistaken. Women will often be more subtle in everything they do than men. I mean, we grind at our eyes. Most women don't. Most women touch their eyes, and you could say it's makeup, but even in cultures where women don't wear makeup, they still are not liable to do what men do, and that's grind at our faces with our hands. And when women, what I found in my years of interrogating is that when women lie, it is often difficult to tell if you are focused. If you're a guy who is heterosexual and you're focused on seduction markers in women, deception markers can look very similar to those. There are changes because there's stress when a person is under duress is going to take away blood flow from the lips and the skin, make your skin pale and your lips thin. And in seduction, blood flow goes back to those mucous membranes. So you'll have heavier eyelids, heavier lips, and those kinds of things. But the tilting of the head and the playing with the hair and those kinds of things that we typically associate with seduction, women can often do in deception. And I can remember teaching young interrogators that would go in and talk to a woman and come out and say, I think she's into me. I'm like, well, number one, why are you even thinking that? Number two, she's lying to you and you're an idiot. But
that's interesting. Now I'm going way down speculation road here, but could those be because that pattern of behavior would distract the thing? Like knowing that it works for seduction, it also can work for deception. Is it a distraction? A deliberate?
I don't think it's deliberate. But go ahead, Scott, please.
In this last thing we did on the debate, remember, Greg, we brought up the point about how Harris was doing some things that she was using to her advantage.
Yep. Well, and often I'll see women do this, take their hair and push it over their ear and show a feminine ear. And men will mistake that for flirting. And you should be ready for the next move. And that's going to be pursed lips and aggression. And men often mistake that, and it's probably evolutionary. I don't have any idea what causes it, but it's likely evolutionary. It gives the woman a second to think. I first started working in large industrial manufacturing companies, and I would see women in in places that there were traditionally not many women breaking into that business 20 years ago, and I would see it a lot. Don't see it as much as I used to, but that is a classic thing for women to move their hair behind their ear as they prepare to go in. So.
Okay, well, this is definitely for Greg Hartley. Hey, Joe again. He obviously knows about you and your eye access and cues.
Eye access and cues, yeah.
How about eyes? When someone's eyes look up versus right, is one indication of lying?
Nope. So here's the thing. When people hear baselining eye movement, and Scott, well, I'm gonna let Scott talk about eye movement here in just a second. But what I'll tell you is anybody who tells you if I look this way, it means I'm lying, they don't understand the process. Let me give you an example. Everyone listening right now, I want you to think about your favorite song for just a second. And I want you to think about 5 words of your favorite song and think about what that 5th word is while paying attention to your own eyes and watch them drift around in your head. With high likelihood, your eyes went somewhere between your brow ridge and your cheekbone. And in most people, it's going to be somewhere to the left. Now, does that mean you're lying? No, that means you're recalling something. And if your eyes went somewhere other than that, that's what's normal for you as you're recalling something you've heard. So what I do is I ask questions that I know the answer to. And as you answer those questions, I determine what your baseline is for things you've heard, things you've seen, and then go from there. So none of that, and we go over that in some of our classes, but none of that means you're lying. I have to find out what's normal, ask you a question, look for you to deviate. The only exceptions to that I can say are pretty constant is people, when they're feeling emotional, look down into their right, just as human nature. And if I ask you to do a math problem, like what's 15% of 980, you'll drift down into your left. You'll first try to remember, and then you'll drift down into your left. So eye movement is its own thing, and you got to get good at asking the right question, or you'll make lots of mistakes with it.
Okay, there's that.
Yeah.
Wait just a second. So anyway.
Here we go.
So I read that in Greg's books, and he was talking about it. We all are familiar with NLP, and I believe the people who were doing the studies on NLP saying, look this way, it means that. And there was always to me a bunch of what wasn't true. It's still for me, a lot of that isn't valid for what I study and for what I have learned from research. However, having said that, Greg kept talking about when we some first times we met up, we were talking about eye movement, how this and that. And I was like, oh, geez, this guy's, it's been great at this point, just some guy read all his books and always sounds like from his audiobooks, this is wonderful. What the hell is going on? So every time that I'd try to butt up against it and say, I'm really not sure about that. And he said, yeah, I know you're not sure about it, but here's the way it works. And he would explain to me. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So finally one day we were recording. I think we were recording part of this course, and this was a couple of years later. And I said, man, I don't know if we should be saying this stuff about eye movement. And he goes, come with me. So we went out in the hall. We found some guy. He said, and before we went, he said, let me tell you what he's going to do. And he told me everywhere his eyes would go for each instance. So he starts talking to the guy, and then he let me know he's going to engage with this. And his eyes did everything he said they would do. So I said, okay. And so we go back in and he said, that's what I'm telling you about. So now every time we go to Waffle House, he has the same setup. So he can prove to me over and over again that these things work, you know.
Well,
so with a waffle waitress, Waffle House waitress.
Guys, there's no magic to it, but you got to know how to ask a question that isolates a sense. If you ask a question about a concert, their eyes are going to be all over the place. But if you ask questions about words that were said, if you ask questions about what color something was, if you ask questions about, timelines, that kind of stuff forces people to remember and to recall. And you just have to be cautious with how you question. It has to be single sensory channel. I'm with you. If NLP said, if you look this way, you're telling the truth. If you look the way, you're lying. Not true. You got to get a baseline for it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
on that note, question there. Do you use the same time to build rapport? I mean, I hate to say multitask, but isn't that a good way to build rapport, to ask these questions? You're sort of trying to find out what's going on, and maybe also getting a sense of what is important or not important to them.
I love going into a CEO's office or going into an executive's office, and they have the I love me wall, whatever they put up on their wall behind them. And often it'll be a golf course, someplace they played that no one else has. And I just use that. I say, oh, that's pretty cool. Where's that? And they'll tell you all about it. And I'll say, what was the day like when you were there? And they'll tell me. And they want to brag about that. And it's pretty cool because it gives me a chance to build rapport. I don't care anything about golf at all, but I can listen to their stories about golf and, yeah, that's cool, and nod and get information. At the same time, I'm baselining because I'll say, who was with you? Hey, what'd you talk about after you did that? Great that day. What was your next drink with? By the way, then you get a ton of information. So use things around you as places to ask questions and get information. And it's powerful. I'll give you one other tip. If you're looking at someone's office and you get the chance, don't look at what's on the walls. Look at what's on their desk. It tells you what they care about.
Oh, because the wall is what you're going to care about going in there.
Yep.
The desk is what they care about because it's near them.
And they're looking at it.
Okay. That makes sense. This one's for Scott.
Okay.
And it's more of a commentary, which is funny. U.S. Southern accents are more trusting compared to Northern Yankee accents. The same is true, but reversed in the UK. And that's why more call centers are in the north of England than the south. Is that why the Beatles are popular?
Is my accent that heavy?
It is.
I mean, is it really? I thought I was like sounding Midwestern all the time. I guess not.
I'm from further south than Scott, is the interesting.
Yeah. Well, shoot, that's too bad. Every time I go visit my parents, I go see them. I come back talking like a wide-mouthed frog. It's like when Amber goes somewhere, or she goes visit her family from Mississippi. She comes talking the same way. I know my mom's watching this. Mom, I'm sorry I'm wearing this hat, but my hair looked horrible. Trust me. I'll talk to you about it at the Czar.
And if I'm talking to people around where I live, I have a much heavier Southern accent. Scott's been here and traveled with me and said, what happened to your accent?
Oh, yeah. Good Lord, man. Yeah. Or you'll hit it really hard on some things they'll tag you for certain parts of the U.S., which is really odd. But I think as far as accents go, what you try to do when you're talking to someone is you want to sort of become people like people who are like them, and they want to be like people they like. So if you come in and you're talking hardcore, if you're from La Follette, Tennessee, and I know what that accent sounds like, or if you're from Jacksboro, Tennessee, it's pretty much the same, but little differences in there. Depending on where you're from, then you want to talk more like that person to get them to like you. If you want them to open up and get them to tell you things, or get them to tell you about themselves, if you need information. So the more you're like that person, the quicker they will identify with you and be and open up and tell you what you need them to tell you. I've gone as far as not a New York accent, but adjusting my vernacular so it's the same sentence structure.
Speed. Yep.
So it's the same sentence structures they use, which is another fascinating study. If you get into the way people will give you information, they'll structure their sentences differently when they're just talking to you than when they're giving you trying to build the picture in your head that they want you to believe that didn't happen, because they're creating that picture as they're telling it to you, or they've got that picture, they just it hasn't come out of their mouth yet.
Yep. The other one for me is understanding how a person structures information means you'll get the information more effectively. If you know that they're based on time, they're on event, or their sequence, kind of think, or you can organize your questions in a way that causes them to divulge information more freely because they feel more comfortable. And even when you do, one of the roles of an interrogator is to do a debrief from operations guys once they go somewhere, do something. When they come back, you got to ask them questions, figure out what went right, what went wrong, what they might have seen that they don't even remember. And that's an important part of that process.
What about cultural things? And I mean, just even with the U.S. made me think about it, but you've heard the term mass hole, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't know that one.
You really don't? Okay.
I don't know.
People in Boston area, Massachusetts, they're called mass holes sometimes.
I didn't know that. I used to live there. I went to school there.
Yeah,
in Boston, downtown.
Very, very, very abrupt and very just the way they speak. Like first time
I know, but once you get to know that accent, they're great. You know the friendly of it, you know the mean of it. I think maybe I got too close to it because I understand when somebody's being mean with that accent and when they're not that kind of person. Maybe it sounds that way. I just got too used to it when I got there. But I don't have very many people from Boston that I didn't like, to be honest with you.
Mine's Jersey. I lived in Jersey for 8 years, and I love New Jersey, and I love people from New Jersey. I mean, just the culture. The part of it that I liked is they're not friendly unless they know you, but some of my best friends ever made in my life are there, and they're very warm and very close people. They're just not polite. I would say to them, if you come to the South and talk to people like that, you're going to be in a fist fight in a parking lot. But it's part of the culture. You know, in Philadelphia, it's one of the meanest places on earth in terms of how they talk to each other. But great.
Speaking of which, we can cover that. Bill Burr in Philadelphia required for everybody to watch him. Because you get to see a mass hole go against a hostile crowd in Philadelphia and spend 12 minutes trashing.
Oh, I saw that. That was, let me tell you something. He's one of my favorite comedians, but, or however, that was one of the most, if you get a chance to watch that. Now what he did was there was a lot of comedians that came out and the crowd turned on him, right? The crowd was just, they were hard.
Oh, they were hostile to begin with. Yeah.
And I think he had 14 minutes when he came out. He had to do 14 minutes to get paid. And he completely just turned it around on an entire stadium full of people. It's brilliant. It was beautiful. I mean, I almost cried when I saw that. It was that's what a big deal was. I couldn't believe it. And that's when he went on the Mount Rushmore of my comedians. I was like, dang, that guy's awesome. So that was fascinating. When you hear what he did, and you can tell what's happening as he does it, because you can tell some people are turning around, some people are getting on his side. The way he did it was brilliant. I know he had a rough time on SNL the other night, but still, that doesn't count because that guy in my book is like in my top three. He's awesome, really good.
Well, he was doing a Ricky Gervais on SNL though. He went out knowing that would happen, and that was funny because he was like plowing ahead now.
Yeah, well, that's his personality type, and that's why he'll be around forever. You know, he'll be a classic.
But yes, that's required homework for everybody. After you buy the course, go watch Bill Burr, Philadelphia. It put him up on the Mount Rushmore of all the other comedians too. So it wasn't just you who was impressed, but all the comedians were like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's one thing if you're working, if comedians working. I did a couple of comedy records, and so that's why I'm because I'm into comedy and comedians. My whole family's into humor, but that when you're working a room and the room turns on, you can turn around. That's one thing, but you can get a stadium, thousands of people hollering at you and booing you, and then him turning around for cheering for him. My God, it's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
It's unbelievable. Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Good.
All right, and we're definitely tearing into course time, but oh well, this is more fun. Question here from Joe, who, by the way, has a Canadian accent. When you watch the videos, you'll hear it.
Yeah.
This is for Scott. A police officer friend once told me that when chasing a suspect and losing them in the chase, chances are they turned right. Do you believe that?
I've never heard that before.
I haven't either. Maybe it's that culture that he was dealing with, but I think people are random. It just
Mike, when I'm dealing with police officers, I'm telling you when somebody's getting ready to run, somebody's going to pull a gun on you. What they might be, if you're looking at a group of people, who's the person to watch out for in that group, which one or two to rate. So there's a bunch going on, but that kind of thing, I've never heard that. So I'm going to look into it now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a UPS driver, they're very likely to. Everybody can look that up
Probably.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. So
they redid all the maps and routings.
Yeah. They don't cross traffic. Yep.
On topic here. Apart from signing up for your program, any good things to study at home, not around people, to learn even more when you can't put the big body language books to tests?
So when I used to teach many years ago, before there were so many places you could go find information, I'd say turn on the news at night, turn off the sound, and try to figure out what's going on. It is powerful because, especially in the world we live in today, where people are so polarized, you can see a tremendous amount of body language in TV interviews. And just start. The best way to learn body language is the approach we're taking. We give you some boxes to put information in, and you need to put things in those boxes over and over and over so that it becomes rote memory for you. It's important.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. What about, isn't that especially effective for watching the debates? Because most would agree they're not actually answering questions anyway. So you can get a lot of vibe just off of turning the sound down and looking.
Well, we just spent, and this is a hard time for us during the year because we like doing crime and those kinds of things on the behavior panel at thebehaviorpanel.com. But we just covered the VP debate, not the fly, the VP debate.
Oh, you left Ken Williams.
And we left Ken Williams and we went to the real debate, and we did one with Trump and Biden, and we'll do the next one. And those are, I think sometimes the body language you're reading is language you're intended to read. We try to go past that when we're looking at this.
That's where Mark's handy, right? Because Mark will
that's his bag,
I
man.
train them to do that.
Yeah. Oh, he's great at that.
Yep.
That's one thing. Like last time we talked, and somebody said, and you asked, "Has anybody ever recognized you out anywhere?" Because we've got 100,000 subscribers, which means nothing, but we've got a few million views. And I've only had one person do it, and I forgot to say that in that when the guy said, "Hey, I watch your show," then he says this. So is that Mark Bowden, a nice guy? And that's the first thing. It says, Mark Bowden really as nice as he seems he is. And I said, yeah, man, he's a great guy. He's a really great guy. I said, I thought so. He's funny. I said, yeah, he's a great guy. Everybody loves that guy.
Yeah.
First time I talked to you, Eric, I said, everybody loves Mark.
Yep.
He's got that figured out. So when it comes to things like debates and presentations and the guy you want to look like, that's the guy.
Sure.
That's, yeah, man.
I need
that's
the
guy you go to.
the hairstyle.
Well, between him and Chase, because all the women are in love with Chase, so you guys are packing the panel there. Have you thought about getting his friend Simon Lancaster on with you guys too? Because that would be really interesting. Because they're like a 1-2 punch. Mark does the training on how to project body language, and Lancaster how to talk and what to actually say.
And
we haven't talked about it
times, but other than that, yeah,
that'd be great. That'd be awesome.
I've had them both on the channel, so make sure you subscribe. Really important.
Yeah, subscribe, guys.
Get me to the 100,000 like the behavior panel.
Yeah, and click like.
Oh yeah,
I say click like. On the YouTube stuff, it always says be sure and tell them to click like, and be sure to tell them to subscribe. We hardly ever remember to do that.
We just kind of get in there and get too wrapped up in what we're watching. Honestly, the behavior panel thing for us has been. It's exciting how quickly it's grown, honestly, because we started off as we're going to get in there and do this thing about Carol Baskin, and here we are. Scott and I've been, like I said, Scott brought me back to body language a few years back, and the thing that we've done here with body language tactics is fun, but doing something live every week is fun for us too, and they all tie together because if you've watched the body language tactics thing, Gavin could probably tell you best. You start picking up on what we're picking up on. We're trying to give you the same skill set.
This is very important here. The William analysis is the best. Can we hope for more funny videos like that in the future? Probably.
It depends on if, like, the thing about Kevin Williams, nobody expected him.
Right.
Nobody expected that. So when he showed up, especially in the middle of debate, to be able to understand what he was doing and why he was there, I think that was what the important part about that. Yeah, it may have been humorous to some, but I think the important part of that was to take Kevin for what he was, and to take Williams for what he was, and to understand what he was actually doing there, which I think we explained really well.
I do too. And he has some haters.
He really did.
Scott, though, I'm wondering, did you practice? Did you learn how to make the particular sound? Because I was very impressed with the depth that you put in. Can you demonstrate to right that sound that he made, like a sort of like a sucking and a slurping and so? Yeah,
flies do that. I was just imitating what our flies, what people like a person like Kevin would do when that behavior. That's all that was. It was just imitating that behavior.
Can you demonstrate? I mean, I think that
I don't even
people
remember what
wanna
it was. I don't remember what it was.
I keep a straight face.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
All right. And yes, I will put up their link. And as a matter of fact, to go to the course, you can go to unstructuredpod.com/BLT course, or just go to bodylanguagetactics.com. Either one. I don't get any kind of kickback on this, by the way. This is just literally, these guys are awesome. They're friends, and I like to share the knowledge.
Thanks for bringing us on too.
Yeah, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
We always have fun here.
Yeah.
Good. I'll just make you keep coming back and back and back. And on that note, we need to wrap up. Everybody, thank you so much. Please smash the like. Check out the behavior panel. Check out the many appearances on this channel. And think of your questions, because I'm going to get everybody back again one way or another. Trying to get the whole panel back before the election. That would be really, really handy.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
We'll do it. Just let us know when.
We'll talk.
Love to.
All right.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. This is wonderful.